All right, so today's topic is going to be MFA, multiple factor authentication. And so I ended up thinking that this topic would be pretty quick and easy, but as I studied for the certification, it actually ended up being more involved than I realized. So we're going to go through the concepts in slides. Then I'm going to show you a demo on my dev org. And if you guys have any questions or any past experience, please add what you know and interrupt me anytime you want. You don't have to worry about raising your hand. We can just do a nice conversation and just let me know where to stop. So what we're going to cover today is what is MFA, what is required by Salesforce, the different methods we have to enable it, best practices from the Salesforce perspective on how to implement MFA, and then maintaining it after you go live with it. And so MFA, it used to be called two-factor, but now it's multiple factor. And so basically it's the practice of using multiple ways to authenticate somebody's identity. The purpose of it is to try to avoid account takeover, where obviously people are always trying to steal people's information. They're called bad actors. They're trying to get your credentials through either phishing or maybe using a man-in-the-middle attacks, dictionary attacks, where they try to, if they know your username, they try to guess your password, keyloggers, or if you guys heard, LastPass had a breach in December where they stole everybody's vaults, both archived and current. And so there's different ways that they can access your information. And so for Salesforce, I've got to move my right now, as of spring 23, MFA is required for direct human logins. And so just keep that in mind that right now it's really Salesforce saying if a human is involved, that's where it needs to be addressed. And I'm going to go off camera because I can't see my whole screen. Close that. There we go. And so what products require MFA contractually? All of them. And so if it's on the Salesforce platform, your agreement says that you have enabled MFA as of February 22. So it's been a while now. So if you're on Core, Sales, Service Cloud, all of the Commerce, Heroku, all of the Marketing Cloud pieces, MuleSoft, Quip, Tableau, they all require it. So who is exempt? Because I thought this was really interesting. When you're looking at the contract, there are reasons why you might have a user that can access the UI, but they're still not required to have MFA. And so if you have non-humans accessing Salesforce, then they are exempt from MFA on the UI. So if you have any kind of automated testing, where they go, they access login.salesforce.com, they have credentials where they log in, they can't do MFA, right? There isn't another way for them to authenticate themselves. Robotic process automation users, again, same thing. If you have processes that you've automated that are doing real actions on the system, you do not have to do MFA for them. And then this one is interesting. If the user is using API calls, they're not required to have MFA unless there's an admin or a human that still knows those credentials and they're logging in on behalf of that user to either reset passwords, reset credentials, tokens, or anything that they're doing for maintenance for that user, then you would still have to have MFA on the UI. It does not have to be on API logins. But
that's
definitely,
pretty cool because I think when we back in time, we had a use case like this where we didn't have this option. We basically excluded the MFA from that user because it was an API. Interesting.
And now there's a way to actually bypass MFA, which that's one of my biggest learnings for the certification room. Like, oh, I didn't know this is a brand new. I must have missed it during release notes. And then external users on Experience Cloud, even though they're humans logging into your Experience site, they are not required right now to have MFA. And I keep saying right now because that's the current contractual agreement that Salesforce has on us. I'm sure they'll extend it in the future, and we'll see how it changes.
Marlene, you've got here that it's human logins, non-human logins. When I've got 3 users in my system, 2 are humans and 1's for automated processes, how am I discerning which one's a human and which one's not?
And so I'll go through when you implement it, how you say these people need to have MFA enabled and these don't, because that's the thing that I learned. I'm like, oh, here's a new permission I didn't know existed. But yeah, we'll see that.
Okay.
So what's the MFA experience? You guys have seen this, I'm sure, 80 million times today, because we're all working for corporate companies that require it. So the user is going to access the login page, they enter the username and password, and they get prompted for a second verification method. If they successfully complete that, then they get access to the system. If they don't have this method, they can't move forward. And MFA can be enabled either by an external provider or by Salesforce to meet the requirements. And so an external provider is going to be, maybe your company uses Microsoft Azure or Okta, Ping Federate, maybe you use like a Google verification method. All of those will work for this. But keep in mind, this is really what you're adding in here. And I think at this point, all of us have experienced it in any number of accounts. So verification types. So what's a factor? And so the way to think about them is they're broken down to 3 categories. One is what you know. So you know your username and your password, and you know your PIN number. You might know your secret question and answer, or maybe on a photo, you know where to click on that photo. That's what you know. The second factor is going to be something you have. Often that's going to be your phone. We rely heavily on the phone for apps to give us access to the system. Maybe have a USB security key, or it could also be something that you are. So if your computer has a way to scan your fingerprint, your iris scan, listen to your voice, or facial recognition, all of those are something that you are. So MFA is going to be at least 2 of these things, and since the systems might require a third. Can you guys think of any other kinds of verification factors that might be used?
Yeah, I was thinking of email. Like that's what our company uses for a lot of our verification, is having an email sent to you. It has a code, and you have to verify that way.
Yeah, and I agree, because you have a phone, you have SMS, right? What other ones can you guys think of? So that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
And you're going to see in a second that Salesforce does not consider email or SMS a valid verification method for MFA. In their perspective, it's too easy for somebody to steal the information before it gets to you via email, and I think SMS is funny because on a mobile app, they're okay with you using a phone with a mobile app that says, yes, this is the person who I am, but they're not okay with you getting a text with an SMS message with a code, which is kind of weird. So that in this scenario would not meet the MFA requirements for Salesforce.
I wonder if they don't accept that because I believe Androids can be set up this way, but I know with Macs, you send me a text, it shows up on my phone, on my iPad, and on my Mac.
That's true.
So you're sending me a text, but you don't have to have stolen my phone to see it. You can steal one of my other devices. Maybe that's what they're looking at.
Yeah, and they're just saying that it's too common for somebody, when you've hacked somebody's password, that they've also hacked your email or something else, and that's why they're saying they don't allow it. But bless you. So verification methods. Hey, so they don't allow SMS. They don't allow a phone call. Nobody at Salesforce is sitting waiting to call you with a code, right? Your bank might. I know I can call my bank and they can allow me into my account if I have no other ways to get in there. Certificates were interesting to me. You can use a certificate, but only if it requires a PIN. If it doesn't require a PIN, you cannot use a certificate for MFA. Things that definitely allow are going to be a physical security key, the mobile Salesforce Authenticator, which is a free app, a third-party authenticator like Google Authenticator, Microsoft, or any built-in device on your computer, because the idea is somebody didn't cut off your finger to get into your Salesforce account. So Kelsey, like you said, SMS and email are really common, but for Salesforce, they're not allowing it for MFA. Keep going the wrong way. So for...
Can you go back to that slide for just a second?
Sure.
Okay, so the third party, okay, yeah, sort of like the Google Authenticator. I know that ours has they've got it all tied in where you don't even have to go to the authenticator. It's all kind of done directly with Google.
Mhm.
So I guess that would probably fall into that category.
Well, if they have Google as your identity provider and you have MFA enabled on Google, that would meet Salesforce's requirements. But if you
Correct.
just,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
if you're just using Google as your identity provider, but they don't do a second challenge, it would not meet the contract.
Yeah. Yeah. It does do a second challenge. So
Okay, yeah, good. Yep, good.
Yeah, Salesforce also consider if you have a certified device with a trusted certificate and it's
Yes, so
restricted to your VPN on an IP address. So they also consider that as an MFA qualified
you're right. So a
login.
trusted device on a trusted network
Yeah.
would be, yep, you're correct. Awesome. So our next slide is, so how do you enable MFA? And right now I'm going to start going between the slides and between the org because I think it's a little bit easier to keep track of it because there's a lot of content today. So the way that you enable MFA on Salesforce is you could do it at the org level for all users. And I'll show you in a second where that goes, but you go to identity verification settings and there's one checkbox where you just enable it. And as soon as you do that, for all user interface logins, it would be required. You could also do it at the custom or standard profile session. You do it at the session settings. And also you can do it by permission set or by profile where you check off that box. So let's look at these three options because they are very different. So can you guys see my dev org over the
Yep.
slides? Perfect. So let's go to identity. And so identity verification has a whole bunch of settings. And one of them I have just about everything checked because I've been playing with this, right? So require multi-factor authentication for all direct UI logins on your Salesforce org. This is the only setting on this page that enables MFA. And again, right now, it's only at the UI level. And so this is everybody that's going to either your domain name or login.salesforce.com would be challenged for MFA. Questions on that one? Let's go to profiles. This is another one that I didn't know that I learned. And like I said, this is both custom and for standard profiles. When you go to our profile and when you go to edit, all the way at the bottom, here you have session settings. And under session settings, you can say session security level required at login. And if you set this to high assurance, any user that has this profile will be challenged for MFA because MFA is considered high assurance, and this is what turns that on. So again, this is one that I learned during the study. I was not aware of this one. Any questions on this one? While we're here, we're also going to look at the second one. So on the profile, you could also set it at, and we'll talk about these two in a little bit. Ignore the one to say manage. We're going to go down here where it says multi-factor authentication for user interface logins. This is very similar to the one that you do on identity verification at the org level, but you can do it at the profile level or permission set. And that permission here is MFA for user interface logins. So those are the three ways to do MFA enablement at the org level, at the profile level, or by permission set. Questions? Cool. So there are also those two other profiles that I told you to ignore. And so these are for managing MFA permissions. And so what I gave you here is the actual permission on the profile and the permission set and the definition that they have for it. So when you select manage multi-factor authentication in the API, it means that these users are able to send verification codes or some of the other maintenance pieces via the API. This particular permission requires manage users because you're really managing the user. You're not just doing the authentication for that user. So this one is a very powerful permission. So this is one that you want to limit highly, just really to, if you have a user that creates other users for you in your org, or they're doing very high level things, this is when you would give them that particular access. Oops. The other one is manage multiple factor authentication for the user interface. This one to me is interesting because this is the one that you want to give to your help desk or to your delegated users. So if somebody is going to help you get people logged into the application, this is what they need. They do not need access to manage users to have this permission. And this lets them, and I'll show you that in a little bit, this lets you send verification codes, disconnect verification methods, and a few other things. It does require view setup and configuration in the technical documentation. It doesn't tell you that it requires view setup and configuration. So if you were to give a user this permission and not give them view setup, they're not able to access the page. So make sure that you do both. And so going back to the UI over here, this is these two permissions we're talking about right now. Manage MFA at the API level. And here you can see it tells you that when you check this box, it's also going to give them managed users. And if you do it at the user interface, it's a standalone permission.
Okay, so if we check manage multi-factor authentication in API, we're going to need to give them additional permissions, right?
It will actually do it for you automatically. So if I do it right now and I check this box, where's manage users? General user
I think that's a
permissions.
system permission, Maureen, no?
Yeah. And that's what makes it fun about keeping track of these. So see, manage users right now, it's not checked.
Yeah.
And that, in essence, gives you a whole bunch of other policies as well, right? So at this point, when you're checking that, when you're giving a whole bunch of permissions, this one is doing reset passwords, unlock users. You see the whole list there. But let's go down here and check manage at the API
That's
level.
always
So
a
I'm gonna-
challenge when you give some additional rights and then you end up giving them
And
stuff
so
where you
I
didn't
check
need it.
one box and automatically check the next one for me. And then when I go up to manage users, it will be checked as well. Manage users is checked along with everything else that's here. And of course, if I uncheck the API, it does not uncheck everything else that it checked for me.
No.
So at the point I refresh the page, I go, oh crap, I don't know what it all checked. So let me remove that because I don't know what else it's going to give it access to. If you're doing it via permission set, it will tell you what else it's granted access to, which is nice, but via profile, it does not.
So when you hovered over that, the information button, was everything that it was showing that it checked for you? Were they just settings or were they profiles, roles, or anything like that?
These are all settings within the profile.
So theoretically, if you push that, it doesn't, hopefully it doesn't set those at that time.
It does. So when you check this, it checks them all for you. And if I uncheck this box, it does not uncheck everything it checked for me.
Right, but what I'm saying is, does it do it within those actual permissions and everything else, or just are all those settings on this particular page, or are those settings within a profile by those names?
They're all
Profiles or permission.
within. Yep, they're all within this page for this profile.
Okay,
And if you do it on a permission set, the same thing is true there. If
okay,
you do it on a permission set, it's only updating that permission set and those profiles there.
okay. So it's not updating something behind the scenes that you can't cancel out of, is all I was kind of getting at. So
Yep. And here, because if I want to undo it, I'm just going to refresh my page to undo everything it has and then just check what I really intended to check. And so to now manage users is not checked like it's not supposed to, and so on.
This is the classic profile, right? Editor, not
Yeah.
the enhanced.
Yeah, I don't like the enhanced.
The enhanced one give you a warning, like if you enable this, there are 5 more permission going to enable with it, right?
It does that for permission sets. Does it do that for profiles?
It does for profile as well.
Yeah,
I believe.
it does it for profiles too and enhanced.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I wasn't sure, but I know it does it for profiles, for permission sets. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Marlene prefers the classic way, the other way.
I can see them all on one page. I don't have to toggle between different sections. So sometimes, they are improving the permission set interface. And of course, everything we're learning today, if you guys saw, they are in, I think, spring of 26. So not for a few years. All these checkboxes are going to be removed from profiles in a few years, but that's a ways away. So
I believe the profile itself is going to depreciate. They'll not keep profiles on, and you cannot create new profiles after that.
Yeah, I haven't read the end of life, but I know that all the permissions on the profiles are going to be end of life spring 26, and you have to do those on permission sets. You're still going to be able to do, I don't know what they're keeping on the profile. I haven't looked at it, but I think they're still going to keep things like password policies and session policies and applications, but it's far away enough that I haven't read it yet. I canceled that.
I'd much prefer a group management structure like you do a network. It's
Yeah.
so much easier to control.
And so again, I'm giving you these permissions so you guys have them. This is exactly what it says on the permission set and profile. When you're enforcing MFA at the API login, it means that they have to provide a second token or authentication method before they can continue at the user phase interface. This is what's required by the contract right now. Just stop looking at the screen. And then this is the one that we were talking about earlier. There's a new permission called Wave, multi-factor authentication for exempt users. And I only gave you part of the description here because it's really long, but you know how we're talking about the non-human users? Gerald, I think you asked that. This is where you assign a permission set with this permission to the users that don't require MFA.
Right. In my organization, they're using trusted devices on the trusted network. So I believe once Salesforce will enable MFA, I mean, they'll enforce MFA eventually in 23rd. I have to assign this permission set to every user because
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the only way to bypass it. If you don't check this and they automatically enable a new MFA requirement, it would not waive it. And just like you said, then they would have to, then they would be challenged.
If they are logging using SSO, then you don't have to assign that wave MFA permission.
It depends. So we'll talk about that too, because it depends on the session setting that you assign to the SSO session. And so in one way, you're still challenged, in another way, you're not.
So Marlene, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, wait.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to ask too. I mean, for a lot of the SI partners, consultants and whatever, we often have to work with shared credentials. Is that something that's covered in any of the MFA things? Because I know that's a real challenge for using a shared credential.
So I'm going to give you the official Salesforce answer. You should not
Buy a
be
license.
sharing credentials. You should have individual licenses assigned to each user, because otherwise you're actually breaking your contract because you are not supposed to do that.
Right, which, you know, that is the correct answer. But I know that I'm wanting to say that Salesforce had made an exception or a workaround for that. But anyway, I didn't know if there was anything on this. I mean, it's much easier to just have the answer that buy a new license. So that's one less thing to worry about for the test.
Exactly. And right now what you need to know is the Wave MFA for exempt users is the way that you get around it. And what's key about this is if Salesforce adds new requirements to MFA and those users don't have this permission, it will prompt them for MFA. This is the only way to bypass it.
Okay.
Not just Salesforce, I believe any enterprise IT, they'll raise a red flag immediately if you talk about sharing your passwords, right? So they'll not allow you.
Yeah, well, and I will say too, I mean, it's coming from so many years of working in enterprise, you know, shops. Sharing of credentials is the fastest way to get you walk out the door, and so it just seemed really odd, you know, that seemed to be a very big practice. You know,
I'll say bad practice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Very bad practice.
Yeah.
So great segue. Let's talk about best practices from Salesforce's perspective. And so what they recommend for you to implement MFA, obviously you should have done it already, but if you haven't, the best practice is the first thing is determine if you have any exempt users. And if you do, you're going to assign the Wave MFA permission to those users. And once you've done that, you're going to assign the manage the multi-factor authentication to user interface to your help desk users, or delegate it, anybody that's helping you maintain MFA. So those are your pre-steps. And then you're going to implement MFA all at once. You're going to alert users ahead of time. You want to give them notice of the date and time that their MFA is going to be enforced. You're going to provide training as to how they connect their other verification methods for MFA to your org. And once those things are done, you're going to turn on MFA at the org level. And so that was under identity verification settings, and you do it all at once. So that's the best practice. They would rather you do it all at once than you do it group by group. So questions on the best practice?
Yeah, I think you're missing a point here for the implement the org all at once. Overstaff your help desk.
Yeah, right.
No, I mean, that's
No, you're
I'm
right.
serious, right?
No,
It's like,
when you roll out, you're going to have a lot of issues, a lot of questions. And so this is the best practice that Salesforce recommends. But I know, having worked with a few guys in the past, I've done the alternative approach, which is still, now that it's available, determine your exempt users, assign the wave permission, get your help desk trained on it, still alert the users. But I would want to do it, I would turn it on profile by profile or permission set by permission set. And then once everybody's on, then I would do it at the org level. I like to do a pilot approach and roll out, because to your point, like I don't have to have a help desk of 50 because I have everybody turned on. And I've been on some very large orgs. I have thousands of users. And so you might need a lot of help. But again, this is not the best practice. This is alternative, and they understand why you would do a pilot and rollout approach, but they're recommending against it.
Yeah, what you failed to mention, Marlene, was that when we did this at Marriott, I had to work with salespeople, and I say this kindly, but I'm talking about like old salespeople who they don't like computers, and that was probably the most complicated group to deal with. And so we had a piloted phased approach here, where well, actually Marlene was mean. She gave me two different tasks. So MFA was one, where I had to show them how to download the app. Some of these people who didn't want to download the app because they're like, I don't want the government tracking me. I'm like, Salesforce is not the government. And then after installing it, showing them how to configure it. And so that was a bit of a challenge. Yeah. So that takes, I would say, a lot of planning. And you definitely want to, phase it out. But hopefully you have me for the team or leader that can help you, right? Where you can provide documentation, a guide of sorts of what they need to do, and then walk them through it, like train the expert, the trainer type of thing, and take that approach. But yeah, it's a challenging task, depending on who your audience is.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Brian, the other side of that, what we ran into with a health or a pharmaceutical company is the union and the employees are like, why am I required to use my personal phone for work? I should be compensated.
Oh yeah.
So there was a whole bunch of stuff before they finally settled on. I don't remember what they decided on, but that was the other issue. It's like, because now this is what it's requiring, right? I have my work laptop, but now you're saying I have to use my personal phone.
Yep.
And all the concerns about now the company's going to know what I'm doing. And it was a lot of work.
Paranoia 101.
Yeah. So just be aware of that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I just want to share my own experience that we implemented with this trusted devices as well as the SSO, and we don't allow anyone to use login outside of the IP ranges. So that does satisfy the requirement. IP address requirement is not there for the MFA, but it does satisfy the contractual requirement for having MFA. And we did MFA at the SSO level. So it's the one app they need to use for connecting VPN. So then it bypasses whole entire implementation of just Salesforce at Salesforce MFA level, at Salesforce level, I mean to say. Yeah. So that's alternate approach. Yeah, we took.
Yep. And so let's talk about that, because there are two ways, right? Just like you said, where Salesforce enforces MFA, and then where you use the SSO to do the MFA. So we're going to look at the org at the same time. So let me go back to the org, and Authentication, verification.
This was literally what I was right about to ask, because our company uses SSO at through the IT level. They do it through, I believe, Microsoft 365, or
Mhm.
yeah, like and they create all of our users. So when they add a user to a group,
Mhm.
it creates a Salesforce user, and then in order to get into Salesforce, they have to log into the network.
Yep, that's great. And I went to the wrong page. I went to identification verification, but for SSO, you go to session settings. And at the bottom, you have session security levels. And so here, the multiple factor authentication is the Salesforce default one. And I've been playing with this org, so I have a different provider. And this one, this SSO is not set up as high assurance. And so this one meets the requirements. And in Salesforce terms, they would use the Salesforce authenticator to be challenged. If I want to use a different identity provider, which in this case is a different Salesforce org, or like you just said, Kelsey, Azure, and they're doing user provisioning or Okta or Ping Federate or whatever that is, you have to move your external SSO provider to also be high assurance. And basically you're saying at that time, you've enabled that identity provider to do MFA instead of Salesforce. And then you would be able to have them both listed here. So that's the difference. If you leave this on this side and leave it standard and you log in with your credentials, you might be challenged for MFA twice, because Salesforce is going to say you have to authenticate yourself, and your provider is also going to say you have to authenticate yourself. So just make sure that if you have your independent SSOs, you move them to the right column.
So question, and this may be kind of a dumb thing, but so username and password, what
Mhm.
happened if you move that over to high assurance? Does that basically say that just by putting in your username and password credentials, that effectively, it seems like that would negate multi-factor if you
It
put that
would,
over there.
it would, and you could, but then you wouldn't be meeting the contract again. But yes, you could do that. And
Yeah,
like
to
you
me, that
can
seems like a
enable.
gap in there in enforcing it.
Exactly. And you can enable something like LinkedIn to log into the org, or Google, a couple other social logins. You could also move those into high assurance. But you guys know LinkedIn doesn't require a second factor level A. You can keep your session open for eons, and it does it. But it's really your responsibility. Salesforce always says the security is a shared responsibility. Salesforce gives you the tools to be as secure as you can be. But if you don't implement them, you can bypass them.
Okay.
Yep. And so Salesforce enforces MFA means the multi-factor authentication is high assurance, and you're going to be using, you're going to set different verification types to allow MFA, and then you're going to enable MFA at the org level. If it's the external provider, just like a couple of you guys have said, you do your external SSO to high assurance, and then you complete your MFA setup on those providers for however they're going to allow you to log in. I know at Marriott we had Ping Federate. At another company, I use Okta, and now I use Microsoft Azure. So it's any number of them. And actually now I use both Microsoft and Okta. But anyway, and then you enable it at the org level. So what kind of verification methods can you set up for users? So a user can log into Salesforce, and they can go to advanced settings, and they can register their own methods. Obviously, you can't register a user on their behalf. They have to register their own. And users can connect up to one each of a Salesforce authentication app, a one-time passcode, or a security key. These are all individual verification methods you can create. They may also enroll in Lightning. They can create their own temporary verification codes if for some reason they need to have that available. And they can add or remove multiple built-in authenticators. So if your computer has both a fingerprint scanner, what's the other one called? Touch ID, or the facial recognition one, you can have multiple authenticating methods. So let's look at what that looks like. I only have some of them set up because in my dev org, I don't have a security key or some of the other things. And when you're a user, actually, I'll do it like the user does it. When you go to user and you go to settings, a user would go to advanced user settings. So you don't have to be an admin to see this page. And then here, I've been playing. So I have Google Authenticator set up and I can disconnect it. I also connected it against Microsoft Authenticator application. And when I switched from one to the other, it removed Google and it added the Microsoft application instead. I have Salesforce Authenticator set up. I don't have a key that I own, so I haven't registered anything, but here's where I would go register it. I have enrolled for Lightning, and then I can generate my own verification code. And again, this is me managing my own account, and I can remove them and add them however I need to. And here, these are all the single ones. And if you scroll to the bottom.
So if you're already logged in, what would be the benefit of generating a one-time code? Is that, I'm assuming that's what that generates.
Yeah,
the
let's say
code
you
is.
left your phone at home and you're in the office that day and you need to do MFA. Maybe you can't generate your own code, but an admin can do it for you, that kind of
Okay.
thing. Or if,
Okay.
you know, yeah, you just misplaced it. So yeah.
Okay, so now you're talking from an admin perspective to go in and to do it on your behalf.
Yeah, I haven't thought of a reason why a user would generate their own code, but it lets you do it. But I agree
Yeah.
with you that you shouldn't have been able to get in to generate your own code
Correct.
if you don't have your phone with you, but that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you also have the built-in authenticator, and here you can add multiple. So if you have multiple devices and each one has its own fingerprint device, you can create one, each computer can be set up on your account. So this, you would see a list here of all the different options.
Well, a few things that I can think of is that is probably more situational, the temporary token. So let's say, you know, you have a work phone and it has to be reformatted that day for whatever reason. You can generate the token prior to they service your
Good point.
phone, because you're gonna be, you know, without a phone for a whole day, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or, you know, or it can be that your phone broke and you still happen to be in Salesforce and you had the hindsight to generate a token, right? And so I think this is more like, you know, like load balancing of sorts of your situation if you encounter it, so that, you know, you have options.
And in my org right now, I'm going to click on generate. It's going to ask me how long I want to do it. And these codes are up to 24 hours. You can only generate one code at a time, right? Because I'm going to be granted this code right now. I can use it as many times as I want in this time period. So I'll generate the code. This code is going to be emailed to me directly. And either I'm an admin or a user, I would share with the person, but it will be emailed to the email on the customer record. And I'll hit done. And then when we go back to our user record, you're going to see that I can expire the code. I can expire it now and create a new one. I cannot create multiple codes for the same user account. It only lets me have one. And the way to think about it is anything that is in the user record at the top, it's a single connection that you can do. And at the bottom, it's a related list, so you can have multiple records for built-in verification methods. All right, so that covers this page. Maintenance. And so users that have that permission we've already talked about, the manage MFA and the user interface, are able to do maintenance tasks for users. So admins or delegated administrators can disconnect those one-time methods. Like I said before, you can't connect somebody else's mobile phone to their account, right? So you cannot connect them. You can cancel logins, you can expire or generate codes, and you can remove built-in authenticators. But basically, you're just removing things so that the user can go, let's say somebody says, I lost my laptop. You can go remove that built-in authenticator for the fingerprint reader. Or I lost my phone. You would remove anything related to the phone so they can create new ones on their own.
Yeah, Okta does that too. You can only have one device. So, you know, I've got a new phone, then I can go into Okta and I have to delete it. And then the next time I log in, it'll ask me, it'll prompt me to set it up.
Right.
Yeah, and that can be also like if you reformatted your phone or things like that, it won't remember. So you have to redo it.
And so now we have about 20 minutes left for quizzes. And so I have lots of questions. The first few questions that I have for you are actually about the content And you don't have to answer the questions if you don't feel comfortable doing it, but you guys know I love feedback. And so let me start presenting this and let me know when you guys have joined. And I'm going to move my screen. Oops, one too far. So me backstage.
Do I get extra points for submitting fast?
You actually do.
Oh, I was joking. I'm just trying to be a smart aleck.
But it has to be right.
Well, that's true.
It's not letting me do the backstage. All right. So have you guys joined?
Yes.
I think so.
Well, it asked me a question I answered, but now I'm
Okay,
not
all
sure.
right.
It seems like it's back to the same thing.
All right.
Yeah. Yep. How was today's pace?
And by the way, the polls are not scored. It's when we have the quizzes that you'll get the score for fast answers. So sorry.
Damn, I
Jeez.
responded too fast.
All right.
Jeez.
How is the quantity of content on the slides? And again, you won't hurt my feelings. I love feedback.
And do we get this slide deck?
You are going to get, so after this session, yes, you'll get the slide deck. And you're also going to get this link. I'm going to make it so you can do your self-paced quiz. So you can take the quiz whenever you want, and you'll still get scored because we're probably not going to go through all the questions today. And so we can either finish them on Sunday if you're joining the Sunday session, or you can just do it on your own.
Okay.
Tikisha, I have one ask, like, because I appeared for the exam and I could not clear. So if we are more questions focused and then we elaborate on more detail, I think that way we can be tackle more focused way, because very dry and tough topic. So concentration is a
No,
challenge.
absolutely. And right now for the Tuesday sessions, we're doing more, assuming that maybe you did the content on your own, the trail mixes or the oh, what's it called? The documentation pages are really hard to read and all that stuff, right? And so it's kind of boring. And on Sundays, we all do quizzes and just asking questions and just do more things. So it just depends on what your schedule is like. All right, I think this is my last poll. How is the quality of the content? "15 seconds left, and I think there's 8 of us, so I'm going to move on. Did you learn something during the session? All right, so now if you're ready for the quiz, I think the quiz is next. Thank you for your feedback. So now you guys should have enter your name and pick your emoji.
Why did
4
mine
eyes.
default to a pregnant woman? I don't understand that.
4 eyes.
I don't know what that is.
I didn't even see it prompt me for an
Yeah.
emoji. I just hit
Mhm.
next or whatever it was.
All right, so now you guys are ready to answer fast because timing does matter. You get more points the faster you answer if you answer correct. I did do multiple answers for most questions. So just like Salesforce, they're going to ask you to select a certain number. And I learned from the last quiz that we did, it'll tell you how many to select and it'll show you the whole content. So let's start the quiz. We're not going to go through all 28, so you'll get the quiz later. So what information is displayed by Salesforce Authenticator app when a reset is sent for approval? We didn't cover this one, so it's okay if
No, we didn't.
we miss it. This assumes that you did some of the work on your own, which I totally get if you didn't.
Send for approval. Oh, I got it wrong. I had to reread it. Doggone it.
I guess. See.
I'm not really sure.
Location.
And
Oh, there's multiples. Okay.
You would totally
Mhm.
expect that it would show you the IP of the request. It does not. Isn't that wild?
yeah, I was surprised with the device one.
So like it'll tell you if you're logging in from a computer or a mobile phone or whatever it
Oh.
is.
So it's like the, oh, got it. That makes more sense.
All right, question 2. What methods are available to implement multiple factor authentication? We did do this one. Select 4.
For the last question, I see that the username is shown and device, but I never seen location. So it is configurable.
Let me double check. And for this one, you have 2 minutes to answer it. Yep, I have username. I took a screenshot the last time I did it, and it's got service, username, action, and client. And the username is my username.
Location is not coming, right?
No, you're right.
Location's not?
It says,
Unavailable.
I think because I have location services disabled, I think maybe that's why, because my screenshot has it disabled, because I had not enabled that on my org yet.
Yeah. Because and it maybe it's not Salesforce, but I know a lot of my multi-factor comes in and says a request is coming in from blah, 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 you know.
Yeah, and it uses the geo location to do lightning login. So I think it's just my screenshot doesn't have it. And sorry, I moved into this question probably too fast, but there's one of the methods on here we didn't cover in the slides. And so the other 3 we definitely covered. 16 seconds. And so you can use your own SSO provider for MFA. You can use Salesforce for MFA. This is the one we did not cover in the session today. You can use Apex to create your own MFA process, which that was interesting to me. And then you can enable it the high assurance. And this is a little bit of a cheat. So, and I'm trying to be Salesforce, right? Enable org settings at the API access level is incorrect. This is the UI access, which is why this one is wrong. And you cannot enable a high assurance security session at the permission set level. It's only at the profile level.
Oh,
Yup,
busted.
busted. And that's what Salesforce is going to do when you take the exam.
They trickered me.
Yep. And so this one, the trick is API, and here it's the permission set versus profile. Questions or comments? All right, we're going to keep going. Question 3. Your org has enabled single sign-on with an external provider that offers MFA. Users are challenged by both the identity provider and Salesforce request MFA. How do you fix it so only identity provider MFA is enforced? Select one answer. I'm missing 2 answers and I have 15 seconds left. right. And so you want to ensure that the proper SSO is set to high assurance. That's how you skip the Salesforce MFA. The let users authenticate with MFA authenticator is not a real permission. I made it up. It just sounded real. Enable wave MFA for exempt users is only for users that should not get MFA at all. And so this should only be if you never want these users to ever get MFA. And then there is no wave MFA for SSO users either. So questions or comments? All right. Question 4. Email is a valid form for multi-factor authentication by Salesforce. True or false? We have 8 answers. I think we only have 8 participants. So I'm going to end it now. And that is correct. And so SMS and email are not valid forms. Nice job. And so I actually remember to add the leaderboard in between the questions so we didn't wonder who won. Because last time Darth Vader won and we did not know that during the session. Darth Vader is not here today. I don't know who Darth Vader is this time. All right, more questions. We have about 8 minutes left. See how many more we can cover. What options are available to implement MFA via Apex? We did not cover this at all. Sorry, I forgot to cover this. Method to initiate verification method to complete verification. TOTO can be used standalone. Apex allows SMS and Salesforce Authenticator standalone methods, and Apex does not allow the security key.
Totally guessing on this one.
Well, I didn't cover it, so yeah. Sorry. And select 3.
Oh, did it say select 3?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, it does up above. I just saw where it says you must pick all the correct answers. Okay. So I know I got this wrong.
What is the full form of TOTP?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
TOTP?
Time-based one-time. I always forget what the P stands for. Does anybody know? Time-based one-time.
Password?
Maybe a password? Passcode?
Yeah. Passphrase,
Passcode,
I
I
don't know.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever, it's one time.
Yep. I always forget what the P stands for. So we have 5 answers so far. 6. 7. We're missing 1.
Yes, here.
I think we have 9 players, but we're going to.
No,
Is
there's
it
only
sorry?
8 people on.
8 people, thank you. Because I forgot to cover this, but you're able to do it with Apex, and it's a handshake. You first request it, and then you complete it, which is why you want to do these 2 are correct. And the only one that actually 2 of them don't require the initiation. It's the one time and the security key. The security key is allowed. And remember, SMS is never allowed for MFA. So that's why this one is wrong. The Salesforce Authenticator is available via Apex, but SMS is not. Question 6. How do you require MFA for users accessing tools such as data loader and connected apps? We also did not cover this one, but if you think about data loader and connected apps, how are they accessing the system?
We didn't cover this?
Nope.
No.
But data loader, what does data loader use to access the system? Is a user interface login?
No.
The 8th person just squeezed in. And so not manage, but multi-factor authentication for API is the way that you do data loader or connected apps. This one is wrong because it says manage on it. There is no org level currently permission for API logins. That's why this one is incorrect. And there is no API logins that can be raised to a session. So it's this one that is correct. Question 7. When is MFA not required for the current contract? So these are your exempt use cases. Select 4. This is when MFA is not required. Seven folks have answered. You don't like the question, huh?
I don't like my results.
And so the one that is not, all of these are not required, right? Robotic testing or robotic systems with API only, users with a community license, that's a really long one, logins with a certificate with the required PIN, these are all fine. But the one that is not required is the IDP with the standard security session. And the standard security session is the reason that this is incorrect. If it was high assurance, it would be valid. We have 2 minutes left. And when we get to after question 10, we get the leaderboard again. What verification methods are available for multi-factor authentication? Select 2 answers. We have 6 people have answered. Too many. 7, 1 more. 8. Nice job. Everybody got right. Question 9. Salesforce Authenticator always allows users to trust the location of login. True or false? Everybody's answered. This one is tricky because you have always, and so an admin has to enable location services for them to be able to use this feature. So because it has to be enabled, it's not always. Questions? We're going to do one more and then we'll get the leaderboard. Oh, no, wait, we got the leaderboard. Yay. So thank you everybody for your time. I will upload the recording to our YouTube channel and I'm going to update this quiz to remove the extra pieces and you'll be able to either join the Sunday session so we complete the quiz if you want to do it together, or you'll be able to do it on your own. I will stop recording.
Marlene, when is the Sunday